When my guest tonight was 9 years old, his mother signed him up for a dance class. The lessons he learned there laid a foundation of movement that helped him to become one of the greatest receivers to ever play in the NFL. Lynn Swann became a national college football champion, a four-time Super Bowl champion, and Super Bowl MVP. But before he had one of the greatest performances in Super Bowl history, did you know he turned down scholarships to Ivy League schools, set the California State high school record for long jump, and told himself before he turned pro that he would only play in the NFL for 5 years? Tonight we'll learn what makes this undeniable icon who he is, a man who once said, "I've always seen myself as put to music." Please welcome college football and NFL Hall of Famer, Lynn Swann.
Whoa. Thank you. Thank you.
Out of the gate.
How are you? Thank you.
That's awesome. Great.
Did you all go to my high school?
Yeah. He grew up in Northern California. This is kind of your neck of the woods up here.
Yes, it is. I graduated from Sarah High School in San Mateo, California.
Since we are in San Francisco, now that I look at you with the beard, how many people have said, "Mr. Rice, can I have your autograph?" You are Jerry Rice.
That means I look younger. He's looking a lot older.
No, I think it's a compliment to you. I want to go back to where it began, which was in Tennessee for you, and how this evolved from a young family in Tennessee to a life growing up in Northern California. Tell me about that.
Well, I'm the youngest of three boys. After I was born, my dad and mom decided, living in Alcoa, Tennessee, which is just outside Knoxville, that if they moved to California, it might be a better opportunity for my dad to get a job and to do a couple of different things. So they decided to pack it up and move out to California. And my dad got a job out here, and my mom went to junior college and got her associate's degree. We grew up in San Mateo, in East San Mateo.
But part of the equation was to give a better lifestyle to the boys.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My parents viewed the move to California as giving us an upgrade and giving us a better start in life, improving on the education, moving us forward, if you will.
Your dad, Willie, an aircraft maintenance worker?
An aircraft maintenance worker for, I don't mind saying, United Airlines. And then later on, he got a job for the San Mateo Unified School District as a custodian. And he wanted that job because of the benefits, the health benefits, the insurance, everything else it provided, and the steady work.
Did you feel protected by mom and dad and what you had in the house?
Always, always. Surrounded by parents who cared, in a church life and upbringing at Pilgrim Baptist Church, where we were expected to be every Sunday, in Sunday school, in church. We walked to school a few blocks down the street and to junior high school a couple more blocks down the street, and parents always said education is the most important thing. And they demanded that we be there and we respond to those kinds of things. And they enrolled us in different things to make us do different things. But, you know, my mom never wanted me to play football. You know, my dad thought I wasn't a very good athlete. My middle brother, Calvin, was bigger, stronger, and faster. And so they all thought Calvin would be this great athlete. And he was a really good athlete at San Mateo High School. And so it was like 7th grade, and Calvin was playing on a Pop Warner football team, the Jets in San Bruno, California. And I snuck out of the house after my mom said I couldn't play. Caught the bus, went to football practice, got a uniform, made the team. Okay, and my mother was livid.
This is like a little Disney movie you're describing here.
she was livid. I mean, I often say that I think I was the first bobblehead football player.
Why is that?
I got the last uniform. I got the last set of shoulder pads. The last helmet, nothing fit. Every time I ran, I'd stop, and everything else was still moving, still shaking around. But my mother said to me at that point in time, when I snuck out of the house against her wishes to join the team, she said, "Okay, fine, you wanted to do this." She says, "You can stay on the team. If you make the team, you can stay on the team, but you can't quit. Period. We're done."
Your mom, who names you Lynn, also enrolls you in dance classes.
I was a hyper child.
This was to drain you of your energy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, in our world today, somebody might say, well, put this kid on drugs. He's got too much energy, tone it down.
Look at that.
But,
I mean,
yeah, that was Surrey with the fringe on top. That was the number that we were rehearsing for there. Enrolled in dance class in the 4th grade, stayed in dance classes through high school. Dance teaches you a lot of things, like preparation. Like your one move here is preparation for the next move. But this move's got to be good. It's got to stand on its own and yet still be the catalyst for the next thing that you do. It prepares us for something down the road. And dance was that for me. It prepared me. Everybody used to tease me. You know, look, I went to an all-boys Catholic high school. My name is Lynn. I'm leaving football practice with a pair of tights and dance shoes. Okay? I had to have some moves.
Right, yeah.
To get there.
Dance became, in some ways, a foundation of what made you the great athlete that you were.
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, it can give you a certain level of confidence in yourself and awareness of your body and what you can do. I don't claim to ever have been any great athlete when I was a little kid. I mean, the first time I got in the football field and I was playing defense, the guy scored like 3 touchdowns over me. Coach brought me over to the sideline and says, what do you think about offense?
Right, yeah.
And I wasn't that good there either. But my mother said I couldn't quit. And so I stayed with it and I stayed after it. And, I tell kids today, you might be great when you're in the 7th or 8th grade. Maybe you're not so good. But if you like doing it, keep working at it. Because you're eventually going to get better.
You got a scholarship to go to Sarah High School. Your brother Calvin, who I know you were really close with, very competitive with.
Very competitive.
Was at San Mateo. What was it like for you to go to this mostly white high school, Sarah High School, while your brother is back at San Mateo?
Well, there were some difficulties. I mean, once again, my mother stepped into the fray and said, you're going to take the scholarship because I think that's a better educational opportunity for you. So I went to Sarah High School. And it was difficult. It was not easy. I knew maybe about 3 or 4 people in the whole school. And, there were some difficult experiences and racial incidents that occurred. I was just speaking to my mom not too long ago, prior to coming up here and doing the interview. And my parents received phone calls from people that thought I should not be at Sarah High School.
Is this from other parents? Or?
This is from other parents, adults, somebody calling the house saying that I shouldn't be there and kick that black kid out of the school, not necessarily in those words.
Worse.
Yeah, worse. You end up being the tip of the spear in so many ways. And how they respond and how you get through it is really going to depend on your core, who you are, who you believe, what you believe in. And I thank God for my faith. I thank my parents for their strength. To get through days like that. Did I have fights? Yeah, I had fights. There was a guy who was picking on me and, he was going to make this a big deal and the whole deal. And so he took a swing at me. I ducked, he missed, I hit him, knocked him to the ground. Nobody messed with me after a while. But, I mean, it's...
You work hard and become a very good high school receiver, and you're recruited by some big-name colleges. What'd you want out of football?
Scholarship and education.
It was a means to an end for you.
I could go to any of these schools, these great schools, and yeah, play football. That'd be fun. I can compete and that kind of thing. But I was going to get an education. I was going to graduate from college at a great school and move forward. Notre Dame was trying to recruit me.
At another position.
Well, yeah, they said another position. But, Joe, I was smart enough to understand that I was a wide receiver.
They looked at Lynn as a quarterback, potentially.
The quarterback graduated. He was a year older than me. And so I played quarterback. We lost one game where I wasn't the quarterback. And we won the WCAL West Catholic Athletic League Championship that year, 2nd year in a row. And so a couple of schools tried to recruit me as a quarterback. But they didn't really want me as a quarterback. They thought maybe if they told me I'd be the quarterback, that I'd come to school there, and then they'd make me a wide receiver or a defensive back.
The old bait and switch.
The old bait and switch. And so, I tell people, young kids, adults alike, you have to understand who you are to ever move forward and get the best out of whatever talents you have. Your skill set, whatever it is, be honest with yourself. And once you do that and you know who you are and what you are, then people can't kind of push you into a corner to make you something else. You know, my parents couldn't afford to send me, if they had to pay for it, to Stanford or the Notre Dame or the Oregon or the Cal or the USC or to any of the schools I was being recruited by. So having a scholarship to be able to go to those schools gave me an opportunity to have a great education, okay? And I picked USC because, not because of the football, I picked it because I felt comfortable there. I felt like, okay, this is my choice. People are trying to push me to Stanford. The priests are trying to push me to Notre Dame. You know, when you have that decision and you make it, the one thing that occurs is that you work hard to make your decision the right decision. No excuses. Your parents didn't make that decision for you. Your friends didn't make that decision for you. Nobody made that decision but you. And so now you go out and make that the right choice.
What made you feel comfortable there?
Marv Gu, who was a defensive line coach who recruited me, Marv Gu said to me that if I came to USC, I'd have a chance to play. I'd have a chance to play. Now, mind you, although I never saw myself as a professional athlete, I was starting to feel like, you know, pretty confident that I could play. I mean, you know, getting recruited by all these schools, going everywhere. A guy wants me as a quarterback. This guy's going to tell me I have a chance to play. Never told me, like some other schools, you're going to catch 80, 90 passes, all this stuff. You have a chance to play. I said, but, you know, if you don't play here, fine, we understand that. But just remember, if you don't play with us, you might have to play against us. How honest is that? I thought that was pretty cool. And I liked the challenge. You know, and I thought I was pretty good once I got there. But then first day of practice, you know, I was a high school All-American, got recruited by all these schools. I walk out into the practice field, and there's about 40 guys, and all of them are All-Americans. I wasn't a big deal anymore.
In 1972, you guys go undefeated and play for a national championship.
At that time, we were considered, and for quite a bit afterwards, that was considered maybe one of the best teams, maybe the best team that ever played college football.
Let's take a look.
The rollout and the toss is to Lynn Swann.
Is that Keith Jackson?
Yeah, or Kurt Gowdy, maybe?
Yeah, maybe Kurt Gowdy, yeah. I mean, I catch a touchdown pass in the Rose Bowl for USC. Okay, that was pretty cool because we didn't throw the ball that much. I mean, you know, it was give it to Sam Cunningham. You know, give it to the running back. So to be able to score a touchdown in that game, absolutely. I mean, I was just thrilled.
1973 season, you become captain.
Yeah, and we made it back to the Rose Bowl against the same team, and they crushed us. Worst game I ever played in my life. Part of it for me, Joe, kind of sharpened my focus a little bit when a friend of mine at USC, not a friend in school, but an alum of the school, who was a friend, a guy named Wayne Hughes, and he asked me a simple question. He said, why don't you play well in the big ball games? I go, what do you mean? I think I play well. He goes, no, you just, I mean, I know you're there, you're not making mistakes, but you don't seem like you play that well in the big ball games. So I went back and I looked at some film when I was in college. And sure enough, it just like, you know, I was there, but I really hadn't stepped up and made the plays. And so it sharpened my focus to make sure that whenever I played the game, whenever I went out there, this could be a big game. You know, make the big play. And I just seemed to have that ability after that particular point.
It's kind of ironic because when you took the next step to the pro level, it really wasn't that much different.
No, it was run the ball, great defense, and that was it.
So you become a first-round draft choice of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, when you got into the NFL, I read somewhere where you said 5 years and fly.
And a cloud of dust.
That's it. That's all you wanted, 5 years.
Yeah, there were other things I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be an actor or a lawyer, but that's kind of like the same thing. But there were other things I thought I wanted to do and felt I wanted to do, and so I thought, well, yeah, why would I play more than 5 years?
Prior to showing up in Pittsburgh, you have an incident with the police.
Mm-hmm.
A lot's going on in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys go through a yellow light.
Well,
that's the report.
That's the report.
Okay.
The report is that we drove through a red light, a yellow light, red light.
Orange.
Yeah, and we got stopped on the other side of the street, right? My oldest brother, Brian, was driving. We were celebrating me being drafted in the first round. We were at a Victoria Station restaurant. My brother, Brian, wasn't drinking. I'm sitting in the back of the car. We're all in the car. We go across the street. The police stop us. And to make a long story short, they stop us. He's trying to cite my brother for a couple of different things. The other policeman comes up on the side, pulls out his nightstick. He's going to hit my brother in the head with it. My other brother grabs the nightstick. All right. He's trying to reach for his gun. And then all these police cars come around the corner. And the guys rushing up the street grab us, kick us, beat us up, throw us in the street, handcuff us, and throw us in jail. When they found out I was a football player, first of all, I had a watch on from the Rose Bowl. Cop just looked at the watch, took a nightstick, busted it, okay, took it off. My national championship ring I had on, all right, instead of trying to twist the ring off, he took it straight off like he was, and almost broke my finger. Just pulled it straight off. And his comment to me was, oh, you were hit harder than this when you played football. And they told me, well, look, Lynn, plea bargaining, like this was going to work. They said, well, look, we're going to let you go. But your brother Calvin has to plead guilty to a felony and a misdemeanor. And your brother Brian has to plead guilty to a felony and a misdemeanor, and your cousin has to plead guilty to a misdemeanor or a felony, but he had to plead guilty to something. And, you know, if my brother Brian is convicted of a felony, you know, he can't be licensed, you know, to be a doctor in the state of California. So, I mean, I'm looking at that. Are you nuts? Like what, you think, you think, you know, what you're doing to me, you think by trying to tarnish my reputation that I'm just going to leave my brothers and my cousin in the lurch and just say, hey, you know, it's just on you, not me, I can go free? Hey, they didn't know me, and they didn't know my family. Filed a lawsuit against the city of San Francisco and the policeman, which we won.
And I'm wondering what the media is saying about you in Pittsburgh before you get there after this incident.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, not a whole lot. You know, they're just waiting to see what's going on. And eventually I got back to Pittsburgh. People asked questions and that kind of thing. I got to know a little bit about how straightforward Chuck Noll was at that time, you know, in terms of being in camp or not being in camp. 1974, they have a draft class that comes in. It's pretty good.
Yeah, 4 Hall of Famers on your team alone out of that draft class.
Yeah.
For football, are you thinking, I want to be the greatest receiver ever. I want to be on a Super Bowl championship team?
No.
No.
No. Now, I mean, look, yeah, do we want to win championships? Absolutely. Was I thinking I wanted to be the greatest receiver of all time? No. Did I want to be the starting receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Yes. Did I want to make plays to help our team win? Yes. Okay? It's one brick at a time.
If you're a brick-by-brick guy, by your own admission, let's start in that 74 season.
There's a strike.
There's a strike right out of the gate.
You know one of the biggest problems of a young guy making a team today? Getting enough reps. You know, if you're good, talent, great. But you need the reps to understand how the system works and to get comfortable with it, right? I always talk about the quarterback, right? Sitting on the bench, watching the starting guy, not getting the reps. A strike is there. All these rookies make this team because he got every rep. It was our training camp. So when the veterans finally came back in to camp, we had all the reps. We knew the system. Everybody felt comfortable.
Not only are you trying to prove yourself to your coaches, but you're really trying to prove yourself to your quarterback.
Absolutely.
From day one.
Mm-hmm.
You got Terry Bradshaw. But tell me about Terry Bradshaw as a young competitor, as a quarterback, and what he was looking for out of his wide receivers.
Again, we're in Pittsburgh. They've got Franco Harris, and they got this great defense. So we're running the ball. So a lot of times we're just working on blocking as receivers downfield. But what Bradshaw was looking for was someone that would just catch that ball when he threw it. And Bradshaw threw the ball hard. Bradshaw, I mean, yeah, Terry will admit that, you know, his touch wasn't all that good. But his expectations were that we'd find an open spot and give him a target.
Let's say you didn't drop a couple balls in practice.
No, you don't want to drop any balls. You want to build that trust and that confidence. You don't want to drop anything. Catch them at practice, you know, catch them in drills, catch them all the time.
Especially with a team that wants to run it. Like
Yeah.
you said earlier, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of opportunity.
You're
So you
not.
can't miss.
No, can't miss.
So he comes in, Lynn comes into the Pittsburgh Steelers, first-round pick. John Stallworth comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, fourth-round pick. I talked to John.
Yeah.
There was a little tension there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He said, look, he's talking to me. He said, look, there's one quarterback, there's one ball. There's Franco Harris, there's Lynn Swann, and there's me. And it didn't start that way because when you guys showed up, there were a couple good receivers already there.
Oh, yeah. And then John and I came in the second and fourth quarter. So we kind of felt good about that. We both wanted to start, but we kind of felt good because we said, well, regardless of whether we're starting or not, we go in the ball game in the second and fourth quarter. So when the game is on the line, at the end of the ball game, we're in. That's a good sign.
That's a good sign.
I'll take that. I'll take that for now.
Working against your own defense was harder than any game you could play
Oh, yeah.
on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this was the steel curtain defense.
Oh, yeah.
And now they've just inserted Lambert into the middle of this thing.
And keep in mind, it's a playoff team, but there were about 14 guys who made this team. Okay, some free agents who made this team on a playoff team. And guys like Donnie Shell, who became a perennial All-Pro, was on this team. And when Donnie Shell hit you at practice, it was like a game. It was a full-body tackle. I mean, John tells the story better than anybody. But you know, when Donnie Shell hits you, John says, you know, Donnie hit him at practice. And John said he was lying on the ground, and he felt something wet running down his lip. And he took his two fingers, he did like this, and he looked at it. It wasn't blood. It was snot. Because Donnie had not the snot.
Not the snot. Literally out of you.
Literally. I mean, so these are the guys we practice against every day. These are guys, unlike me or Lambert or John, weren't drafted. They were free agents. So they're trying to make the team. And they had to show that they could be on the team and compete every day at practice. And so when they were trying to prove themselves, John and I and everybody in the offense, we're going out there and says, all right, game on. We got to prove ourselves. So every day at practice, we developed an attitude, thanks to Lionel Taylor, who was our coach at the time, former receiver himself, that every day we were winning at practice. We're going to beat the defensive backs. Every day at practice, we're going to win. Every day. Not just one day. Not just occasionally. Every day, we're going to win. So when we got to game day, it's set. We're winning.
When I talked to Tom Moore, who was eventually a receivers coach there for you, then moved on, and he's still in the game today.
Yes.
He said you had a God-given ability to focus on the football better than anybody he's ever been around. Now, this is a guy who has coached decades, doesn't even, like half a century, feels like. And of all the guys he's seen, you are the guy that had a laser focus on the football. Where'd that come from?
I don't know. I mean, it's just a matter of you're going to get hit. You know, you're not going to get that many opportunities. You got to judge the ball. You got to judge the speed. You got to judge where it's going to be, your timing to get up to catch the ball. And you got to do all that stuff. You can't do it if you're not looking at it and not focused on it. And so that's what I did.
So this is a franchise that had barely enjoyed any postseason success for a long time. You're drafted in this great class in '74. You go from a national championship right on through to a Super Bowl. Yeah. I mean, that is instant success in the National Football League. That's right.
And to see Art Rooney Sr., who had had that franchise for 40-plus years, standing there taking the Vince Lombardi trophy. I mean, that's my rookie year. What did I know? There one year, we win the Super Bowl. You know, am I supposed to jump around and say I'm great? Here's a guy who had owned this franchise for 40 years and never held a championship trophy until that moment. I mean, I wasn't the starting wide receiver. I was the first-round pick. I got time in the game, started a few games. You know, that was it. You know, I wanted to be the starter, and I wanted to be that guy. So you had the motivation coming back.
1975 was a big year for you. You're more aware now in year two of everything around you, and I'm wondering, you know, the great Chuck Noll. I don't feel like I know that much about him.
And that was by design.
He was a private man.
Very private man. Very private.
Successful.
Did a great job of working with his assistant coaches to coach them up. Guys who went on to have success at other teams and do well. You know, obviously Tony Dungy was an assistant under Chuck and eventually became a head coach in Tampa and Indianapolis and winner of a Super Bowl.
How well did you know him?
Yeah, I didn't know Chuck that well, but he was a teacher, and he was a great teacher. Chuck was the offensive coordinator, really, because he gave the game plan to Terry, and then Terry called the plays. So Chuck was that guy. We didn't have another guy who was a quarterback coach, or we didn't have another guy who was the offensive coordinator. It was Chuck. Bud Carson was the defensive coordinator, but Chuck was a guy on offense.
1975 was a big year for you.
A very big year. Actually, it was Ron Shanklin, who was a starting receiver, wore number 25, came up to me one day in practice, and I kind of tweaked my hamstring, so I wasn't practicing. And he said to me, he goes, "Hey, Swanny, you better get well in a hurry." I said, "Why?" He said, "'Cause, you know, as soon as you get ready, then I can go play football somewhere else." And so either he felt it or he knew something was in the works. And I got better in that preseason. They traded him to Chicago. So I was now the starting receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers in my second season.
In 1975, you go 12-2. You meet the Raiders in the postseason. This rivalry between the Steelers and the Raiders was one of the most intense rivalries on the field.
No, I'd go beyond intense. I'd say it was vicious.
It was nasty and dangerous.
Oh, yeah. And vicious. Vicious. Intentionally vicious.
The name George Atkinson is a name that's linked with you because of a hit that happens in that championship. There's some love from the booth. Oh, well, that's too bad. Anyway.
There was a lot in that, and there are some things that you never saw. So, you know, we know more about concussions today than ever before, right? So you know that some guy can get hit, dinged, if you will. It might be a slight concussion, but you have no effects of it. Guy doesn't pass out, not feeling nauseous, but he's a little dinged. In that ball game, towards the end of the first half, I was coming across the field deep. Ball went to Rocky or Franco on the sideline. I'm just jogging in the back because I'm not going to go back and block because it's going to be a clip. So I'm looking to see if he breaks a tackle and comes back. As I'm jogging this way, and the officials are all focused on the ball, Jack Tatum comes up from behind, okay, full speed, forearm to the base of the neck, hits me, knocks me to the ground, and then jumps in front of me and looks around for the official. And no one saw it. Okay? Then I come back in the second half, and I get that hit. As you can see, Atkinson wasn't going for the body. You know, if I had ducked, he looked rather silly.
It's going for your head.
Right for the head, into the ground.
And I don't know if fans watching the NFL in its current form realize that in your day, in your prime, you would go across the middle and defensive backs, I mean, they're big safeties and big defensive backs, literally tried to time their hit to hit you as high and as hard and as violently as they could.
Absolutely. It was how the game was played at that time.
So this hit happens in the AFC Championship game, and you come out of that. Now the Super Bowl's next up.
Yeah,
and you say, in 2 weeks, you say, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play in that game.
Yeah.
The Dallas Cowboys and members of that defense in the secondary started talking.
Yeah, Cliff Harris said he never said what was ever printed in the paper. He said he didn't say it.
Which was?
Which was, if that Swann comes back and plays and he, thought he got hit last week, I'll knock him into the middle of the next week. Something along those lines.
So that gets to you.
Yeah, and I had a horrible week of practice. The doctors cleared me, said I was fine. Didn't practice the first week. Second week, and we weren't hitting at practice or anything like that. No, people were told to leave me alone. But they threw me a pass, and I was dropping everything. So my confidence wasn't at an all-time high.
But they pissed you off.
But they, yeah, literally got me a little upset.
So this is when the world sees it, really, for the first time.
Yeah.
This is the world stage, the Super Bowl.
On the rebound, Mark Washington with him again.
That gives me chills. It makes them applaud. There's no way, Lynn, you can look at that first catch along the sidelines. It's one of the most brilliant catches I've seen in my life. You go up, your momentum is carrying you out of bounds, and you can't look at that knowing you and your story and not go, there's the ballet, there's the dance.
Yeah.
Because along the sideline, you're doing this like scissor twisting thing with your, I mean, that was just a thing of beauty.
Thank you. Thank you. It was, it was important to me to make the first catch. Not having a good week of practice. Got to have Bradshaw's confidence. He's got to throw me the ball.
They're yapping about you.
They're yapping about me. He throws that ball. And as you can see, Mark Washington was all over it. I mean, today a quarterback would be told, don't throw that ball unless you're desperate. And this is at the beginning of the ball game. And but Bradshaw throws it. I got to go up and make the catch. And it's everything I do. I mean, it's whatever I have. It's going into making the catch. I gotta get up there, come away with the ball.
There's this quote up on the wall. I've always seen myself as put to music. That catch is put the soundtrack to any stage.
Yeah, and I think it was Kurt Gowdy in the booth that referred to me as the Baryshnikov of football.
That's right.
And so, I mean, that in and of itself was really cool.
Do you consider yourself a dancer before you consider yourself a football player?
Yes. But I'm not a very good dancer now.
Well, you probably aren't a very good football player now.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
Let's see how Super Bowl 10 ends.
Won the Super Bowl for the second consecutive year.
Yay!
Oh. 4 catches, but the first wide receiver to ever win Super Bowl MVP.
I didn't even realize it. They said, you're the MVP. I said, I'm the MVP? They said, yeah. I said, oh, feels good. I didn't know. I had to drive myself to the after party because I was late getting out of the locker room. I pick up my friend. We go to the Super Bowl party. And my grandmother calls me over. And she says, son, I have a question to ask you. I said, sure. She goes, now, I've watched you play this game for a little bit now, and this is like the second time you won the whole thing, right? I said, yes. Nanny, we won the whole thing. She says, well, son, when are you going to stop and get a job?
Oh, my God.
I said, well, probably pretty soon, but I'm not quite sure when
Right.
just yet, But it always stuck with me because I think in that time period, football was America's best part-time job. You got paid more than the average person, Then you got a chance to compete, got a chance to win more money in the Super Bowl. Then you had a whole off season. Minimum wage in the National Football League, my rookie year in 1974, was $12,500. Yes, it's now over $400,000 minimum wage, $12,500. So when Donnie Shell and Reggie Garrett and all those guys who were rookies on the team who were free agents, and we won that first Super Bowl, and we got a winner's check of $25,000 or $30,000, that was double their salary. So winning meant something than just a ring and a championship. It meant twice your salary, okay? So we understood in the offseason, you know, this is nice money, but you're not making enough money to quit, you know, to never work again. So I went back to school at USC, and I took graduate courses in radio production and broadcasting. I took an acting class, I took a writing class, I took a speech class, and I started working in broadcasting. Got a local job. I couldn't get a job in Pittsburgh in the off season, but I got a job at KBC TV in Los Angeles. And so, you know, that little catalyst, she said, yeah, I was going to quit right then. But it always stuck with me that she was saying, well, what's next?
If she was watching, she definitely would not have liked seeing what happened after that MVP in the Super Bowl in 1976. Mm-hmm. September 12th, right at the beginning of the year. Here are the Raiders again.
Yet again.
Here is George Atkinson.
One more time.
One more time. And the viciousness, which you referenced earlier, you get drilled from behind, away from the play. Your head coach, Chuck Noll, in essence, comes to your defense and says there's a criminal element in the NFL for which he gets sued by Atkinson. Mm-hmm. And
Al Davis.
And Al Davis, okay. And Al Davis, the owner of the Oakland Raiders. Mm-hmm. But there's the headline. Did you sense that these hits were personal?
Oh, they were very personal.
And I know it's person to person. It's against Lynn Swann.
They didn't know me.
But they
George didn't know me. Now, there were guys on that football team who were on my team at USC. Charlie Phillips and Skip Thomas, Alonzo Thomas, who played corner. And, you know, they were there. Skip told me, a championship game, he said, watch yourself. I said, why? He said, there's a bounty on you. Now, we know the familiar story in New Orleans and the whole deal.
Why do you think that was? Because you were...
They wanted to win the game, but in order to win the game, it's like, if we're talking strategy and tactics, put your lockdown corner on the best receiver and take away the weapon, okay? That's what you try and do, right? Part of the strategy. Well, other than Mel Blount, who was a lockdown corner. So the strategy for them was, we'll take the best guys and we can knock them out of the ball game. They're out of the ball game. It's our advantage. What's
keeping you coming back? Because you did toy with it. I know it entered your mind walking away. At any point does, let's just bow out now, shoot through your head?
I didn't want to leave unless it was on my own terms. And I didn't want, you know, look, I recovered from the concussions and I was fine. I didn't want to walk away and have people say, well, we ran them out of the game.
The Steelers have won it. They had a great win in Super Bowl X. This was even better. Chuck Noll goes off. He has won his third Super Bowl title.
Happens again in '79.
Victorious in Super Bowl 14.
Four championships in the '70s. For the guy that considers himself a dancer before a football player, to think what you accomplished on the field is extraordinary.
It's great, but I mean, again, Joe, it's being fortunate. It is having been drafted on a team that was gifted with some great players and guys who focused on the game and being a great team, who sacrificed individual talent for the team to win. It was a scouting department, I mean, that picked those players, drafting players from historically black colleges and seeing real talent that would make the team work, getting them all together. I mean, that was the key. An ownership group that said, go play. You know, said, Chuck, build this team, make it work, do it your way. I mean, so we all came together.
1982 rolls around, and that's when you decide to retire.
Mm-hmm.
This man who has had it cross his mind multiple times and who told himself when he got into the league, I'm doing 5 and fly. What was it about 1982 that said, I'm ready to go?
Phone call from ABC. We're watching, Monday Night Football. I get a phone call from ABC, and they've acquired the rights to the USFL, Spring Football League. And I'd worked for them in the off season, and they offered me the opportunity to come to work for them full time at ABC. But at that time, they felt that they couldn't have an active player in the NFL. And so I negotiated a contract on the phone that night with ABC, and deal was done.
So you were that ready that when you got that phone call, you shifted gears and went from a 4-time Super Bowl champion to finished, moving on.
It wasn't so much that I shifted gears, but, I've been working in broadcasting since '76,
Absolutely.
kind of preparing for it. I negotiated a contract that was a 3-year contract that paid me more than I was making playing professional football. And I could do this for a lot longer. What would you do?
You finally get the call that you're a Hall of Famer.
Glad you said finally.
Right. I mean, you had to wait after your eligibility happens.
Mm-hmm. 5 years.
5 years for that, and now another 13.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen 7 of your ex-teammates go in, your head coach go in, your owner go in. How many Saturdays did you wait by the phone, either literally or figuratively, thinking today's my day, before you just said, I give up?
Maybe twice.
First 2?
Yeah. And then, and the rest of them were no better. They don't really call you to tell you that you're in before they announce it on TV. That's when you first hear it. When they announce it on TV, that's the first time. Then they pick up the phone and start calling the guys who are in. And some of the guys might be in town, and they try and get them over to the press conference area where the media is to talk to the media about going into the Hall of Fame. So the phone never rang. Never rang. So there's no need to stand by the phone. So I got the TV on, and the guys are coming out saying, well, the class, Hall of Fame, new class. He's reading all this stuff, and he says, my name. But I'm now so conditioned to thinking I'm not going in. I think he says, and not in again, Lynn.
Come on.
I thought he said that. I'm going like, did he say not in again, Lynn? I'm looking at the TV, so I'm waiting. I'm just waiting. I'm dumbfounded. I'm looking at the TV set. I waited until I saw it up graphically on the TV screen. And there was my name. New class 2001, Lynn Swann. Did I cry? Absolutely. Absolutely cried. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And so I went into the hall, and it was great. It was terrific.
And who presented you?
I had John Stallworth present me because, people had said that John and I were taking votes from each other. People didn't know, they said, well, I think John should be in, Lynn's here, I think John should be in, Lynn, all this stuff was going on. And so I asked John to introduce me to the Hall of Fame because I wanted people to see John. John was lives in Madison, Alabama, just outside of Huntsville, very successful businessman there. And, he hadn't been, in the media, hadn't been a lot of attention paid to John after his career where you didn't see him on TV. And so I wanted him there. And I said in my speech that this is supposed to be a player's finest hour. I said, for me, it's only a half hour. I said, it'll be an hour when John Stallworth is elected to the Hall of Fame. And he got elected the next year. But Joe, well, folks, when I talk about that, that wasn't such a big deal for me to do that. 'Cause John's my teammate. We went to battle together for 9 years, you know, with the goal of winning Super Bowls. And if you can't do that for your teammate, then they were never a teammate. They were just a guy. And you don't win 4 Super Bowls with just a guy.
At wide receiver on the all-time Super Bowl team is the man I'm sitting across from right now. There's the Hall of Fame, and then there's...
Yeah.
For a guy who was talked to by a friend who said, why don't you play better in the big games? And you took a look at yourself in front of that mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You made everything count when you had opportunity in big games in those Super Bowls.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's that honor like?
You know, it's kind of interesting because, you know, I didn't even know they were voting on that kind of team. And it's an honor. It's an honor, it's a privilege, to be one of those 2 guys.
Speaking of votes, you ran for governor of the state of Pennsylvania in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
You lost to Ed Rendell.
Yes.
But this was not a landslide against you.
No.
I mean, you represented and showed well in that race.
We did very well. We raised a good bit of money to put on the campaign. But we fell short. We just didn't win. And it was disappointing not to win. But it was a great learning experience. And it was extraordinarily fulfilling.
What was going on in the country, in your life, and what to make you take that step to run for governor?
Well, you know, I felt we needed a change. I felt we needed to have people elected to office who weren't necessarily going to be professional politicians, who could bring together a group of people to have an impact, to make the state better. So I looked at it as volunteering. I didn't look at it as this was going to be a career. I looked at it as volunteering. You volunteer for a cause to serve other people. And so while our officials have to get elected, they should be elected to fulfill the obligation to take care of the people and the state, not to serve their individual career.
What's next for you?
You know, I don't know. I think it was the late General Chappie James, Air Force 4-star general, African-American, who said, in talking about education, he was talking about being prepared. He said, because when opportunity knocks, you don't have to wait and say, let me go back while I get something before I can open that door. You want to be prepared. So for me, going back to school to prepare for broadcasting, developing a skill set, continuing education to learn more, to do more, hopefully has me in the right position. So if an opportunity presents itself and I see it, I'm able to take advantage of it.
Well, here's an opportunity for you to answer silly questions.
Oh, okay.
It's like we're at a dinner party, kind of a would you rather. Would you rather have nosy neighbors or noisy neighbors?
I think I'd rather have nosy neighbors. I've had noisy neighbors, okay? And that's not a lot of fun at 3 o'clock in the morning in an apartment building and they're jumping up and down. I'd rather have a nosy neighbor because if something's going on in your house or something else, maybe they're nosy enough to call the police and stop the bad guys.
That's a good thought. Would you rather be a master of every musical instrument or be fluent in every language?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Especially for you.
That's a tough one. I think, I'm terrible at languages. But I think being able to play every instrument, I'd settle for being really good on the piano.
Would we all?
Or a saxophone.
Or saxophone.
Yeah. Piano is so expressive in terms of everything you feel and you can put down and play and that kind of thing, and the saxophone is just sexy. An alto sax, it's just sexy.
I think we can all agree that Lynn Swann, this 4-time Super Bowl champion and Hall of Famer, this dancer, it's been a pleasure. Lynn Swann. Let's walk on out.